Hawaii was supposed to be paradise, a place where Ethan and I would reconnect before our wedding, a trip planned by his father, Warren, who insisted it would be good for all of us. He booked the tickets, the hotel, everything, and I thought he was just being kind, a generous man, a thoughtful father-in-law. But what I didn't know was that paradise would become the place I lost my innocence, and that the man I trusted would leave behind a wound I'd carry forever. It was the third day of the trip. Ethan left early to explore the volcano on a guided tour. Warren invited me to lunch at the resort's Ocean View restaurant. I hesitated but said yes. I didn't want to seem rude. He was charming, funny, sophisticated, the kind of presence that makes you feel seen. He asked about my studies, my family, my dreams. He made me laugh. He said things Ethan never thought to say. I felt flattered and guilty for feeling flattered. After lunch, he asked me if I wanted to continue the conversation in his room. "Just coffee," he said, "nothing more." And like a fool, I said yes. The room was filled with soft jazz, the curtains drawn, a bottle of champagne already open. "To our beautiful future," he said, handing me a glass. I laughed. I drank too much. The rest is a blur. But I remember the way he touched my face, the way his voice changed. I remember saying no, not loudly, not forcefully, just no. He didn't listen. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I froze. And when it was over, he said, "Don't worry, Lilla. This will be our little secret." And I just nodded. I didn't tell anyone. Not Ethan. Not even myself, really. I told myself it was nothing, a misunderstanding, a mistake that should be forgotten. But deep inside, I knew what had happened. I just couldn't admit it out loud. When we returned home from Hawaii, I pretended to be fine, smiling through dinners, holding Ethan's hand. But something inside me had cracked, and once it cracked, it started leaking everything. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't feel safe. I kept thinking about that hotel room, that voice, that smell, that moment I froze, that silence, that made me complicit in my own betrayal. Weeks passed. I told Ethan I had jet lag, told myself it would pass, until I started getting sick. At first, it was just fatigue. Then came the night sweats, the headaches, the tremors. My body was no longer my own. It was failing me, and I didn't know why. I went to see Dr. Davis. He asked a few questions, ran some tests. I waited, fearing the flu, hoping it was stress. It wasn't. I sat in his office as he said it, HIV. I remember feeling like the room disappeared, like all the air had been sucked out, like my world was folding in on itself. He asked if I knew how I might have gotten it. I said no. I lied. Because in that moment, I wasn't ready to say it out loud, that the man who infected me was the same man who raised the one I loved. I went home that day in a daze, holding that diagnosis in my hand, as if it were a curse written on paper. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just sat, numb. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered into Warren's study. It was late. He wasn't home, and I wasn't looking for anything. But I found everything. In the bathroom cabinet, behind bottles of cologne and vitamin pills, I saw them. Little orange bottles, labels printed in tiny clinical fonts, antiretroviral medication, 3 different kinds. I picked one up and read the prescription date. 18 months ago, a year and a half. That was the moment I knew he had infected me, knowing, consciously, without a word, without warning. He looked me in the eyes that day in Hawaii and handed me a glass of champagne and a death sentence. The anger that filled me, it was unlike anything I'd ever felt. It didn't explode. It seeped in, like ink into water, dark, slow, irreversible. I thought about telling Ethan, but how? Your father, your own father, He ruined me. How could I destroy the man I loved by revealing the monster he came from? So instead, I started writing pages late at night, every thought, every ache, every secret. My journal became my only place to bleed. I knew I couldn't keep the truth hidden forever, but I didn't yet know that the truth was already unraveling itself, piece by piece, in shadows I couldn't see. There's a limit to how much silence a soul can carry, and mine was overflowing. I kept rehearsing the conversation in my head, 100 different ways to say it, but no matter how I phrased it, it always came down to the same sentence. Your father hurt me. Not just physically, not just emotionally. He broke something sacred. That evening, Ethan and I were alone in our room. He was reading a book, his glasses sliding down his nose. He looked peaceful, innocent, and I hated what I was about to do to him. I need to tell you something, I said. His eyes lifted, gentle, curious. And then, like a dam breaking, I told him everything. About Hawaii, about the champagne, about the hotel room, about the diagnosis, about the bottles in Warren's bathroom. He didn't interrupt. He didn't move. He just stared at me, unblinking. When I finished, there was a silence that felt like a scream. Ethan slowly stood up. His face was pale, his hands clenched. You're saying my father, he whispered. I nodded. He didn't cry, but I think a part of him died right there. Where is he? He asked. At the office, I said. He walked out the door without a coat. I tried to stop him. I grabbed his arm. Ethan, please, don't do anything stupid. He looked at me with eyes I didn't recognize. I just want to talk, he said. I didn't believe him, but I let him go. The next morning, I woke to the sound of screaming. Jenna, the housekeeper, her voice sliced through the quiet halls like a knife. I sat up in bed, disoriented. The sun was barely up. The air felt heavy, like it already knew something terrible had happened. I stumbled into the hallway, and then I saw Ethan, standing outside his father's study, frozen, his face blank, his hands trembling. There was blood, a dark, dried pool soaking into the Persian rug. A bronze statue, Athena, lay on its side, smeared in red. Warren sat in his leather chair, head slumped, still, too still. Detective Marlo Miles arrived within the hour. She moved through the house like a whisper, calm, but watching everything, asking questions, taking notes, but I couldn't answer. I was somewhere else. They asked me where I was the night before. I said I'd taken sleeping pills. I told them I never woke up. It was almost true. Ethan didn't say much either. He looked hollow, like something had been scooped out of him. We sat together on the living room couch, side by side, but we didn't touch. We didn't speak. I don't know if he was protecting me or if I was protecting him. Part of me felt like I should cry, but I couldn't, because somewhere inside there was a quiet voice that whispered, "He's gone. He can't hurt you anymore." I didn't mean for anyone to read it, not Ethan, not the police, not even myself, not really. But when you carry a secret too heavy for your heart, sometimes your hands take over, and mine wrote at night, when the house was asleep and the guilt was awake. I wrote about Hawaii, about the champagne, about his hands. I wrote about the pills, the diagnosis, the moment I found the medicine in his cabinet. I wrote the words I couldn't say out loud. He knew. He infected me, and he never planned to tell. I hid the journal under a stack of magazines in my bedside drawer. I didn't think anyone would find it. I didn't want them to. But of course she did. Detective Marlo Miles. She found it days later while I was sleeping. I guess I should have been angry, but honestly, I was relieved. Relieved that someone else finally carried a piece of it. Relieved that I didn't have to pretend anymore. That maybe the truth could finally breathe. She read every word, And I knew the moment she looked at me differently. She didn't see a victim or a suspect. She saw a girl standing on the edge of something so heavy it could crush her. The day Ethan was arrested, the rain was falling in long, quiet sheets. It was the kind of rain that makes you remember things, even the things you wish you could forget. He sat across from Detective Miles in that same office where his father had once ruled. His voice was low, steady, but his eyes, they were tired. He confessed everything, how he confronted Warren, how Warren laughed, how he said it was Lilla's fault, that she had seduced him, that it was an accident, that it wasn't a big deal. And Ethan snapped. He grabbed the statue. He didn't count the blows. He just saw red. He didn't stop until it was quiet. When I walked into the room, Ethan was in handcuffs. He turned and looked at me, and for the first time since Hawaii, I saw peace in his face. "I did it," he said, "and I don't regret it. He destroyed you. He would have destroyed us both." I tried to hold back tears. I failed. Detective Miles looked at me and asked if I had anything to say. I said yes. I said I would testify. I would confirm every word in my journal, every moment, every wound. The trial would be long, painful, public, but I didn't care anymore because hiding had done enough damage. Ethan asked me not to wait for him. He said I deserved better. He said my life was already broken enough. But I told him, I will wait, as long as it takes. He shook his head. "No, Lilla, forget me. Forget all of it. Start over." And then he smiled, not with his mouth, but with his eyes. He was taken away not as a monster, but as a man who had lost everything and still chose to protect the one thing he loved. I stood by the window for a long time after the car drove away, watching the rain fade into sunlight. A rainbow stretched over the city, beautiful and brief, like us. I still carry the virus, still carry the memories, but I also carry strength, and that has to be enough. Sometimes love doesn't survive the truth, but truth can be the beginning of something else. Some secrets should never be buried, and some truths, no matter how painful, deserve to be spoken, because truth, even when it breaks us, can also set us free. The story of Lilla, Ethan, and Warren is more than a crime tale. It's a quiet tragedy born not just from one act of betrayal, but from a series of silences, denials, and wrong turns that no one had the courage to stop. Warren sinned out of selfishness, Ethan out of love, and Lilla, she was the one left carrying the weight of both. But what makes her story powerful isn't her pain, it's her strength. In a world that told her to stay quiet, she chose to speak. She wrote, she testified, she refused to let silence define her. We often avoid the truth because we think it will destroy us, but it's the hiding that does the real damage. Unspoken pain grows in the dark until it consumes everything in its path. This story reminds us that telling the truth may cost us something, a relationship, a reputation, but it also gives us back our dignity, our clarity, our power to heal. Even when love doesn't survive the truth, truth can still be the beginning of something else. So if you're carrying something heavy, a secret, a scar, a silence, know this: you don't have to carry it alone, and you don't have to stay silent forever.